So picture this. The year is 2026, and the world is absolutely glued to the situation in the Middle East. A full-blown war between Iran and Israel is underway, and it has sent shockwaves across the globe. But as the first reports start pouring in, a pretty surprising story starts to take shape. A lot of those early headlines are all saying the same thing. Iran is winning. And you can kind of see why, right? The shock of seeing a modern, high-tech military getting hit hard by unconventional tactics, it makes for a powerful narrative. But is that what's really going on? In this explainer, we're going to peel back those headlines and get to the reality of this war. All right, so let's jump right into that. Let's tackle this huge gap between what everyone's hearing in the news and the much, much more complicated truth on the ground. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. The headlines shout about a clear victory, but the reality? It's a brutal, complex stalemate. We're seeing devastating casualties on both sides. Critical infrastructure is just in ruins. And the economies of both Iran and Israel are being pushed to the brink. So the big takeaway here is that the outcome is anything but a sure thing. So, how did we end up in this deadlock? To get that, you have to understand the battlefield itself. Because this isn't a conventional war. It's a fight defined by two completely different ways of thinking about combat. It all kicked off on February 28, 2026. That's when Israel launched a massive preemptive strike, hitting Tehran and key Iranian missile sites. Now, their reasoning was pretty straightforward. They wanted to push back against Iran's growing power in the region and, maybe most importantly, put a stop to its nuclear program, which they saw as an existential threat. The goal was to land a decisive blow and cripple Iran's military right out of the gate. And right there, you see the two opposing playbooks. On one side, you have Israel, which is leaning heavily on its biggest advantages, a world-class air force, incredible technology, and pinpoint intelligence to carry out surgical strikes. Then you have Iran. They know they can't win a head-to-head fight like that, so they're playing a totally different game. They're avoiding direct confrontation and using unconventional tactics to try and level the playing field. And there's a name for what Iran is doing. It's called asymmetric warfare. It's a classic strategy, really. The weaker side doesn't try to match the stronger side plane for plane or tank for tank. Instead, they use different tools, things like proxy fighters, cheap but effective drones, and their own geography to wear down and exhaust their more powerful enemy. So, what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, for starters, Iran is activating its whole network of allies, or proxies, like Hezbollah and the Houthis. This move alone forces Israel to fight on several fronts at once, stretching its military thin. Next, this becomes a war of attrition. The goal isn't one big victory. It's to slowly drain Israel's resources, its money, its people. Then there's the geographic card, using its control over the Strait of Hormuz to mess with global oil supplies. And finally, they're launching waves of missiles and drones, not at armies, but at Israel's strategic weak points, like its energy facilities. And that last part, that pressure on the Strait of Hormuz, that's where this conflict stops being regional and starts sending massive shockwaves through the entire global economy. You know, you hear regional war, and you might think it's contained. But not this one. This war has a truly global price tag. And honestly, no country is safe from the economic fallout, which is why this matters to you, no matter where you are in the world. Think about it like a domino effect. As soon as the Strait of Hormuz becomes a war zone, the world's energy supply is at risk. So boom, oil prices shoot through the roof. Shipping becomes super dangerous and expensive, which breaks vital supply chains. That leads to ports getting clogged up, which slows down trade from Asia to America. And all of a sudden, every country on Earth is scrambling to figure out its energy security. But beyond the military strategies and the economic figures, we have to talk about the most devastating impact of all, the unbelievable human cost of this war. Millions. Just let that number sink in. Millions of people have been forced from their homes. This isn't just a number on a screen. It's a massive refugee crisis, a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding at a scale that's hard to even imagine. The very fabric of everyday life has been ripped to shreds. We're talking about essential infrastructure on both sides. The bridges that connect cities, the roads people rely on, the power plants that provide electricity, the systems that deliver clean water, all of it is heavily damaged. Rebuilding is going to be a staggering challenge. And in the middle of all that destruction, a public health crisis is exploding. Hospitals themselves have been hit, and the ones that are still standing are completely overwhelmed. You've got doctors and nurses working around the clock with barely any resources as the casualties just keep piling up. So all of this brings us back to right now, to this moment in the conflict, a state of pure exhaustion and deep uncertainty where nobody really knows what happens next. Okay, so after all the fighting, all the strategies, all the economic pain, and the human suffering, can we finally answer that first question we asked? Is there a clear winner? This little scorecard here really says it all, doesn't it? On the military front, Israel's powerful army is stretched incredibly thin, while Iran, even after taking over 16,000 strikes, has managed to keep its most important capabilities. Economically, both are hurting badly. Diplomatically, Israel is facing huge international pressure to stop the fighting, while Iran is actually using the global economic mess it's created as a bargaining chip. I mean, this is the very definition of a